What is up, everyone? Time for What is up, everyone? Time for another installment of Pandemic Pantry, and today, by request, we're going to do beef stew for two. This is one that's kind of near and dear to me. I was a Boy Scout, so I've done beef stew for almost as long as I've been cooking things. And I think the same was actually true with the requester. The request was for something like stews or chilies or things that you normally make for a group that are kind of hard to make for a smaller audience. Now, of course, you can absolutely double this recipe if you want to make it for a family of four, but today we're going to focus on really just making it for a meal for two, and there will probably be a little bit left over. To start off, I want to thank everybody who's been watching the videos. The support is great. I've been posting them on both Facebook and YouTube just to get the exposure out there so more people can see them. If you're watching this right now on Facebook, I highly encourage you to just click over to YouTube. It's youtube.com/markberm. Subscribe to my channel, and then you won't miss any of the new stuff as we get it posted. With that, I guess we'll dive right into it. Okay, so for ingredients today, we're going to need about 3/4 pound of beef. Today I'm using a couple of 6-ounce steaks that have been buried in the freezer for a while, probably a little longer than they should have. If it's a little less, if it's a little more, that's just fine. But for today, we're going for about 3/4 pound, which is just about what this is. We're also going to need 1 onion, roughly chopped. We'll need a couple tablespoons of oil, salt and pepper, 2 cloves of garlic minced. We're going to need a tablespoon about of tomato paste. We will need a cup of beef broth and or red wine. I'm going to do about 3/4 cup of beef broth and 1/4 cup of red wine. Actually not using beef broth, I'm using this Better Than Bouillon stuff. Super compact. I mean, it's concentrated, keep it in the fridge, lasts a year. I don't have to keep cartons of broth in the cabinet for no reason. We're going to need a tablespoon of Worcestershire sauce and a teaspoon of brown sugar. And a little bit later in the recipe, we're also going to need 2 small or 1 large potato peeled and cut into 1-inch chunks. We're going to need 2 carrots cut into 1/2-inch pieces. We'll need a little bit of cornstarch. We'll need a tablespoon of lemon juice and a teaspoon of thyme leaves. All right, so to get started, we're going to prep our onion. And we're going to be cooking the beef, browning the beef first, and then pulling that out, and then we're going to sweat the onions and the garlic and the tomato paste, kind of get a broth going. Put the beef back in, make sure that it's cooked, good and cooked, and then last thing, we'll make sure that it's thickened well enough. We'll add our carrots and our potatoes, and at the very end, we're also going to add about 1/2 cup of frozen peas. I'll point out you can substitute frozen green beans if you want for the peas. If you want to use canned vegetables for the carrots and the peas or green beans, that is fine too. However, they require much less cooking, and I would suggest that you add those towards the very end with just enough time to warm them through in the stew rather than earlier on. This is all raw vegetables, so they're going to need to cook in the broth for a little bit. All right, so let's get started with the onion. Okay, and now we want to take care of the beef. Again, you can use any cut of beef really for this. Use what you have. Like I said, I'm using steaks, and these are pretty nice steaks, but they've been in the freezer for quite a while. So now is as good a time as I need to use them. And I just want to cut these into about 1-inch chunks. And a little bit of fat on here isn't going to do any harm. We're cooking for long enough that most of this should render out. But if you want to trim some of it off, that's okay too. Okay. I'm gonna just season this all over with a little salt and pepper. And let's get our pot up to medium heat. Let's see, how's that looking? So, first step, we're gonna brown the beef. Now, I haven't really talked much about the spoon bread on the side yet. That's really just a little thing based on one of those cheapy Jif corn muffin mixes. We'll get to that a little bit more once the stew is simmering for a while. But that's what this water bath is for. I've got some water in here on relatively low heat right now, just so that it's quicker to bring it up to a boil when we're ready to start cooking our spoon bread. I think this is okay. We don't want to cook the beef too much at this stage, so I'm gonna take this out. And in go the onions. And we just want to cook these for a minute or so until they're, a few minutes until they're translucent and softening up. You know, if at any point the pan gets a little dry and you need to add a little bit more oil, that's okay. Just try not to overdo it with the oil if you can avoid it. And it's okay that some of this is turning brown. We want a little bit of that to develop on the bottom of the pan. That's what's going to give more flavor to the stew. Alright, so those are just starting to get translucent. I think we're good. At this point, I'm going to add the garlic and the tomato paste and cook it for about 30 seconds, and then we're going to add our wine and broth. And actually, I need to open the wine.
This needs something. You can't put wine in hobo stew?
Well, of course you can. What goes better with hobos than wine?
Like I said, I want to do about 1/4 of a cup of wine and 3/4 of a cup of broth. A little extra wine for good luck. Alright, so about a tablespoon of tomato paste. And our garlic. You can mince this with a microplane, you can use a garlic press like I'm doing, you can Just run your knife through it a bunch of times. Alright, so in goes our wine and broth, our Worcestershire sauce, and our brown sugar. And we just want to get this combined. Get some of the brown stuff up off the bottom. And I'm going to add back our beef and any liquids that were in the bowl. All right, now this is going to take a minute to come back up to a boil. So while that happens, I'm going to get some stuff cleaned up and come right back over. All right, so this very quickly came up to a boil, and we reduced it down to a low simmer, about as low as you can get it. And still have it be simmering. So we're going to cover this. And turn our attention over to the spoon bread. So this is relatively easy. We're going to take 1 egg, so to the 1 egg we're going to add about 1/3 cup of milk. These little cartons are great to have around. They're each an 8-ounce, one cup of whole milk. We don't drink a ton of dairy milk, but I like to have it on hand for baking or on the rare occasion that I have brownies or a slab of chocolate cake and you really just want that to go with it. So yeah, these are shelf stable. You can buy them in a 12-pack, I think even a 24-pack. My supermarket has them in the same place where the organic stuff is. It's not with the juice boxes, it's not with the dry milk, it's not with the, it's not anywhere you would think it would be, but so you might have to look for them, but they're handy to have around. So we're gonna beat 1/3 cup of milk and egg, and that is just the instructions per what the Jiffy box says. Okay, so we're going to put, oh, almost forgot the honey, about a tablespoon of honey, let's keep things moist, we're going to dump our Jiffy mix into the bag. And we're going to add our milk, egg, and honey mixture. And then you just kind of want to squeeze the bag with your hands to get the stuff mostly mixed. You don't want a ton of it, don't squeeze too hard. You don't want it all riding up the bag, but you do want to try and get it all wet, so there's no not quite any lumps of dry ingredients, but you know, even if there were, it's gonna hydrate in the time that it sits in there. All right, and we're not done mixing it yet anyway. So to this, we're going to add about a tablespoon of butter or margarine. I like to use this stuff because it melts easy. We're just trying to get a little bit of a fat in there, a little bit of a butter flavor is all. So then to that, we're going to add about a third of a cup, give or take, of frozen corn. And that just adds a nice fresh pop and some moisture to the mix. And we're just gonna stir that a little bit with a knife. Just be careful not to poke the bag because we are gonna cook this in water. I'm going to press out as much of the air as I can, close the bag a little bit towards the middle, but I want to make sure I'm not closing it all the way. And then we're going to immerse that in our pot of water and loosely cover it so that the end of the bag sticks out like this. You just have to make sure that this doesn't slip in there, otherwise you're going to have problems. So what we're going to do is, when we get to the point where we've got about 30 minutes left on the stew, which is when we're going to be putting in the potatoes and the carrots on the final steps, we're going to crank this up to get it boiling. We're going to let that go for maybe 20-30 minutes to cook what's in the bag, and then we'll have a nice spoon bread to go in the bowl with right next to the stew. Soaks up some of the stew, some of the excess liquids, delicious. We're going to get some stuff cleaned up, and we'll be back when it's time for the next step. All right, we're back. So it's been about an hour and a half, and our stew is looking pretty good. We're going to prep our potatoes and carrots and throw them in. I'm not too worried about thickness yet because I know the potatoes are going to kind of thicken it up. So something that I actually like to do, just a little tip here, is if you have vegetables that you don't think are going to last, you don't know if you're going to use them in time, they're starting to go, carrots, celery, that sort of thing, cut them up, you know, prep them, throw them in a bag, throw them in the freezer. I do that, and I have, at any given time, you know, we've got some carrots from March, some celery, also from March. It's great for soups. It's great, you know, whenever you need carrots or celery and you don't have the fresh stuff. You know, it's helpful to have that stuff around. So that is all. Ooh. Now again, about 1-inch-ish pieces on the potatoes. So really we just want to stir in the vegetables. Cover it. Increase the heat a little bit, just a little bit higher of a simmer, just to make sure we get those vegetables cooked through. And we'll come back in about 20-30 minutes. The vegetables should be cooked. At that point we can add our thyme leaves and lemon juice and peas, just get those heated through, and we should be almost ready to serve. Actually checked on the spoon bread a little while ago and it is perfect. So I've got the heat off, or almost off right now. It's just waiting for the stew to be ready. So we'll see you in a little while. Alright guys, I think it's been about 30 minutes. The potatoes and carrots are definitely looking good. Alright, so what we want to do now, what I want to do now, is scoop out a little bit of this liquid. And somewhere about a tablespoon. We'll stir that in. So that should help thicken things a bit. We're also going to add our half a cup frozen peas. It's actually a little more than half a cup, but that's okay. Do our thyme leaves and our lemon juice. Alright, so we're going to let that go about 5 more minutes. And then we should be ready to serve. And in the meantime, I think we can take our spoon bread out. Alright, I'll see you back here in a few minutes. Alright, we're back and I think we're ready to serve. Leaves a streak. This should be a nice thick stew for 2, plus a little leftover. So first thing we want to do is spoon out some of our cornbread. Then I'm going to ladle it's got a little bit of everything in here. meat is so tender. Carrots are soft but still firm. And still snapped from the peas. Got a little bit of the gravy kind of mixed with the spoon bread. Really good stuff, folks. Well, that wraps it up for another one. I hope you try this recipe because it is really good. And not to flex, but I actually developed this recipe for you. I couldn't really find any good recipe that was for 2 people. There's nothing that was good. You know, it was all just a little too plain for my taste. So I wanted to come up with something nice, and this is what I did. I actually have also came up with this spoon bread recipe as well. So these are 2 Mark originals for you. If you like the recipe, if you like the video, you like the episode, please give it a thumbs up. Please subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. If you haven't, what are you waiting for? This stuff's delicious, and I'm just going to keep making more videos. All right, that's it. Until next time.